whenever there's information bans or attempts by governments to shape information, it means that they're afraid of what's out there. They're afraid of the possibility of counter narratives or just facts, truthful evidence. They don't like it. We know governments are kind of like criminal elements, really. They're criminal gangs, and criminal gangs, they fear exposure. Okay, they fear evidence that shows they did something wrong or they're guilty.
There's no limit to what these governments, whether they're criminal gangs or Karen, yesterday, the United States sent its 500th flight of arms to Israel. 500 flights in 9 months of the war. You can see how vital U.S. aid is to this Israeli onslaught.
And certainly the American media clearly is not doing its job, unless their job is to do as Netanyahu advises them to do. If that's the case, they are doing their job. But I don't think many Americans feel that that's what our major newspapers should be doing.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. Thanks for checking the video out. And this last video I just released talking about a lot of Western media, right? Israeli media propaganda. Really suggest you to go check that out. That was originally part of this video here, right? And so the reason I say that is because that was like an introduction to this story, right? This story being like the big main show. And the reason that it's the main show is because, I mean, this is more political circus and theater than even we're used to.
One particular sensitive subject when it comes to Israel was the subject of the abductees or the Israeli prisoners in Gaza who were released. It started with Yocheved Lifshitz. Yocheved Lifshitz was a woman who Hamas offered Israel to release without any return. They said, we want to release this woman alongside another woman because of their age and because they are frail, and we don't want anything in return. Israel refused. Hamas offered them again, and Israel refused again. Later on, Hamas resorted to offering Egypt to accept these women, and Egypt did. Then they were taken by the Israeli army back to Israel, and Yocheved Lifshitz had a press conference. A press conference that Israel labeled as a Hasbara terror attack, or a PR explosive attack.
It's a miracle because I survived October 7th and I survived this bombing, and I also survived the rescue. This was what Noah Argamani said before her release from Gaza. Wow. She said, I was located, hang on, I'll read it. She's saying it in Israel. I was located in a building. It was bombed by an IDF airstrike. F-16 fighter jet rockets hit us. 2 rockets exploded, and I did not.
One did not.
And one did not. In the building where we were in the El Qassam soldiers, and 3 hostages. Myself, Etel Fursky, and Yoshi Serbi. After the building we were in was hit, we were all buried under the rubble. Assam soldiers rescued my life and Etal, El Qassam soldiers. Later, we were not able to save Yossi. After many days, 2 nights, Etal and I were relocated to another place. While being transported, Etal was hit by an IDF airstrike, and he did not survive. So they killed 2 of the 3 hostages. I remain injured in my head. My head is full of shrapnel, and I have injuries in my body. Etel Fursky and Yoshi Shirabi, they died because of our own IDF airstrike. Stop this madness and bring us home to our families. While we are still alive, bring us home. So that's what really happened. And hostages weren't our top priority, is how Israel's bombing frenzy endangered captives in Gaza.
You do this. You do this.
In front of their parents, they dragged 255 people, both living and dead,
into the dark dungeons of Gaza. Israel has already brought home 135 of these hostages, including 7 who were freed in daring rescue operations.
I don't think he wasn't expecting that. He's like, okay, that hits good.
One of those freed hostages, Argamani, is here in the gallery, sitting near my wife Sarah. On the morning
Do you see her face right there?
The entire world saw Noah's look of desperation as she was violently abducted to Gaza on the back of a motorcycle
Her look of desperation as she was abducted
a few months ago.
to this fucking
She was dying of cancer.
speech. She looked like
said
she didn't
to
want to
me,
be there at all.
Prime Minister, I have
She didn't
one
look happy
final
right
wish.
there.
So my reactions from BB's speech, that was like raw. Just feeling the moment and watching this girl's body language, right? And I just knew something was wrong, and you'll hear it on the footage. I knew something was wrong. It didn't seem right at all to me, right? And then it comes out later that the whole story of, you know, essentially her captivity was like a real twisted ordeal as far as how it was reported. You know, this story is an interesting one. I talked about all the lies of Israeli news, of Western media, in different ways, right? In a lot of different ways, and some of my recent works. But with this in particular, with this Noah girl, right? Like, this story developed for me personally in a certain way, where I watched Netanyahu's address live, right? And I've reproduced footage of his address live, right? That I screen recorded, and you can hear me kind of like giving a little bit of replay as it goes. So you'll see that on my channel, and that's where that content came from. So like anything that you hear me talking over is that day when I was reacting to it live, you know. I also wrote an article that was a live reaction, basically, on my Substack. It took me a while to get it out, but it was pretty much a live reaction to that speech. And I mean, geez, me reading that back, I can feel the energy in that article. He had me quite, you know, watch it. The whole speech itself is on my channel too in full length, and you can watch it for yourself. And it had me worked up. I mean, it's really crazy. Really crazy. Seeing our politicians just clap for another leader like that is insane. So, you know, I'm watching his address. And it was very much like a State of the Union address, right? Like all the way down to he brought people that he had sat in the gallery that he, you know, came to at different points in his speech. So these were like military service members, and I guess this one girl who was a hostage. Okay, this girl Noah Argamani. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the way I told this story here with Noah, as far as like I found it out.
In a recent statement, Noah Argamani, one of the Israelis who was released in what Israel labeled as a heroic rescue campaign,
including 7 who were freed in daring rescue operations.
I don't think he wasn't expecting that.
They labeled it as a heroic rescue campaign, although they massacred 270 Palestinians during that heroic campaign. Over 270 Palestinians wounding over 400 and causing mass destruction and killing 3 Israelis in the process, and wounding the person who is making this statement, Noa Argamani.
So this whole like series of events with her coming up, showing up in Washington, right, along with Netanyahu in his bought and paid for seat that he stood there and he used to spout propaganda, right? So like seeing her come up like that, and then seeing her come up in the news about all the hostages, it was just too crazy. And then I came across this dude, Mahmoud OD, and he's the Iranian fellow that's in here. And shout out to you, bro. Like I really love your channel, and good info, and very objective. And you know, I'm just trying to expose people to like other sources of information. At some point you have to look around and say that if everyone around is coming to the same conclusion, like, and you're the one that's wrong, like, is it you, or are you making the wrong call here, right? And certainly the case of us on Palestine right now, anyone that's still siding with Israel is certainly in that seat, no doubt.
She posted a story on her Instagram saying that I cannot ignore what happened here in the press in the past 24 hours. Things were taken out of context. They did not hit me and they did not cut my hair. I was in a building that was bombed by the Air Force. And the exact quote is, this weekend after the shooting, as I said, I had cuts all across my head and I was hit all across my body. I reiterate, I wasn't beaten, but I was hit across all of my body because the building collapsed on me. As a victim of October the 7th, I will not allow myself to be a victim again, this time by the press. This is a very strong statement coming from an Israeli who was released from Hamas. She is no longer in Gaza, and there is no interest for her to defend Hamas. At the end of the day, they kidnapped her from Israel, haven't they? She was released later on, but no one is forcing her to say anything. As a matter of fact, she's in Israel now.
You see her face right there?
You know, it's a really, really crazy story. I didn't know any of these things when I like saw the speech. You know, this is all stuff that really developed later. So like, I wanted to put this together because oftentimes this is how the truth comes out, right? Unfortunately, like today, you have to do a lot of piecing together and reading between the lines to get not just news, but the truth, you know.
Isn't it pretty clear that he has lost the propaganda war around the world? He's only got the United States with him.
Yeah, it's obvious. It's obvious that he's lost it. And he knows this.
She said about how well she was treated by the Palestinian resistance. She said how they took care of her, how they took care of her hygiene, how she was constantly treated, and also how she was bombed all the way, being taken to Gaza, and during the time she spent in Gaza. It didn't stop there. We started to have more and more evidence coming from Israelis who were released. Firstly, we saw many images of them hugging the Palestinian resistance fighters. As a matter of fact, Yocheved Lifshitz, out of her own accord, went back to a Palestinian resistance fighter from Hamas, shaking his hand and saying shalom in Hebrew. Later on, more and more statements started to come from the Israelis who were released from Gaza, describing how the Palestinian resistance fighters treated the women like they were queens, as if they were holy, with so much respect, making sure that they had food and making sure they had the basic necessities, although Gaza was facing mass-scale destruction and a full-blown genocide. Now, Israel is still on the offensive of spinning everything and sending propaganda and lies about the Israelis who were released from Gaza to a level where some of these people who were released are criticizing Israel.
The pain these families have endured is beyond words. I met with them again yesterday And I promised them this: I will not rest until all their loved ones are home. All of them.
You'd have to have the IQ of a grapefruit to believe Israel's government actually wants to bring them home. So,
Tell him, Jimmy.
But clearly, she is very offended by how the Israeli mainstream media is portraying the stories about the Israelis who were released from Gaza, and she's not alone. The people who are protesting in Israel on a regular basis are some of the people who were released from Gaza, and some of them have been detained by the Israeli police. They don't want you to know that. They don't want to publish it on the headlines because they still want to protect Israel and make sure that Benjamin Netanyahu can continue in his position.
And as the time goes on, the lack of control of the optics is just exploded. They have no control of the optics. Now, in America, they do, but we're their only ally.
Thank President Biden for his heartfelt support for Israel. After the savage attack on October 7th, he rightly called Hamas sheer evil. He dispatched 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East to deter a wider war. And he came to Israel to stand with us during our darkest hour, a visit that will never be forgotten.
And the more friends, the better. The more supporters, the better. And Israel's down to 1. And that 1 is the United States, which also has grown enemies. We haven't created friends in the past 20 years. We've created enemies. So we're not popular either. Neither is our money.
All of this highlights time after time how many lies are being published by mainstream media and how easy it is for the Western mainstream media, including politicians and people in power, to adopt the official Israeli narrative, despite the fact that it's in complete opposition to the statements coming from the first victims on the 7th of October, including those who were released from Gaza.
Right. His point is that our officials are allowed to. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the narrative is. It doesn't matter what the truth is on the ground. He's going to come to Washington, say what he's going to say, and we're going to write out the next so many $1 billion in funding. And everybody's going to pat themselves on the back in Washington because they just made their biggest lobby happy, right? And they just earned their check. So, of course, right, like these same interests own our media and own Israeli media, right? We're talking about all Western media. Yeah, so I don't know, when I first saw him wrap this video up, Mahmoud right here, like I was like, yeah, of course, like that's on point, but I felt like he's missing something. And then the more I was crafting this point, I realized that he made my exact point entirely, right? He said like the way that Western officials are allowed to continue to take these false narratives, even though they're proven false and proven as such by literally the first person that was on the ground that day. Like not even an eyewitness account, literally the eyewitness account. And this is a repeated scenario, right? So yeah, and he's exactly right. We see it here. We've seen it here since 2020. They just continue to roll out the next thing, and it doesn't matter what anyone says at the end of the day. And they continue down their steady march. This whole talk with ceasefires with Israel this whole time, right? That's clearly just been lip service. the whole world is standing here looking at us, wondering why we're not doing anything, right? And it's pretty much us and them at this point. So I really hope this information gets out there to my fellow Americans in particular, and that's who I'm targeting it for, because like we really need to, I guess, not only really like understand that the lies, you know, are more than just about our domestic situations, but we need to like understand that there's a whole lot of international stuff, and right now it's big. Like, for any reason you might want a leader, the right leader for this election, or, you know, after this administration, if you consider what's going on geopolitically, you know, this is the biggest decision ever. We're already at a deficit. We're already operating in a hole, as it were, right? So it's a matter of like, how can we effectively maneuver this problem that we're in to lessen the blow of what's happening? This stuff's happening, whether we like it or not. The world is signaling that they will move without us. They're already doing it with Israel. So, you know, like he said, the same thing that allows these lies to persist, permanent state ties, rather, that we're seeing come out and right at every angle, right? Ever since that debate, it's been a crazy world. And we all know that they're at the bottom of it, right? Like the whole Biden administration, State Department, the Democratic Party has ties to Ukraine. That's deeper than the war. And, you know, I happen to think they got a whole bunch of servers of some sort stored there. We know they got the labs there of different varieties. Russians have found them. So this is what allows these lies to persist, because they own the media.
President Biden and I have known each other for over 40 years. I want to thank him for half a century of friendship to Israel and for being, as he says, a proud Zionist. Actually, he says a proud Irish-American Zionist.
Oh, we're a proud Zionist now. Of course we are, right?
My friends, for more than 9 months, Israel's soldiers have shown boundless courage. With us today, is Lieutenant Avichai Reuven.
Let's see how you look, friend.
Avichai is an officer in the Israeli paratroopers.
Abichal.
His family immigrated to Israel from Ethiopia. In the early hours of October 7th, Avichai heard the news of Hamas's bloody rampage.
Oh,
he put on his uniform.
He heard the news.
Grabbed his rifle, but he didn't have a car. So he ran 8 miles to the front lines of Gaza to defend his people.
Look how good our programming works. Look at this fine young example of a robot. Can you believe it? He's like, can you believe it? It still works like this?
You heard that right. He ran 8 miles, came to the front lines, killed many terrorists, and saved many lives. Avichai, we all honor your remarkable heroism.
In fact, the best thing that they ever did for the BDS movement, which is to avoid economically supporting Israel by not buying Israeli-made products, best thing they ever did for that was invade Gaza, because that's exploded. That is a permanent fixture now, globally. Nobody wants Israeli stuff. Nobody.
The Palestinian people and the Arab people in general, are they the animals that people in the press want us to believe they are?
I spent 7 years in the Middle East, and I do speak Arabic, and I was the Middle East bureau chief of the New York Times. If there was one constant, it was that Arabs around me urged me to trust them, and I would say in every single case, I was never betrayed. Arabs around me urged me to trust them in every single case, in every single case. I was never betrayed. I was never betrayed.
There was one constant. It was that Arabs around me urged me to trust them, and I would say in every single case, I was never betrayed.
So yeah, man, enjoy my commentary on the rest of Netanyahu's speech here. The shit was crazy watching it. I really suggest anyone that hasn't seen this, like, take the time out of your day to watch this. It's about an hour, and I mean, seeing it live really was up there for me. It was quite a trip. I think out of the hour, I counted it. I mean, I believe it's like over 20 minutes standing ovation. So it's crazy, man. I'd love to see our lawmakers that enthusiastic about fixing problems here at home. Right? That's all I could think watching this thing. Shit made me sick. So, all right, everybody. God bless. Thanks for checking us out. Support the channel, like the video, sub the channel, and need all the support. Channel's young, as you can see, so I appreciate the love. All right, everybody. Peace.
A lot of people in Israel, people and politicians there, are very, very concerned because, you know, you need friends. When you're a little country that's doing nasty things, you need friends. And the more friends, the better. The more supporters, the better. And Israel's down to one. And that one is the United States.
For the forces of civilization to triumph, America and Israel must stand together. Because when we stand together, something very simple happens. We win, they lose. And my friends, I came to assure you today of one thing. We will win.
Bro. This shit is weird, bro. Really weird.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah, and again, like, you'll see my reactions throughout all this footage, and that was just live in the moment, right? The whole thing just read as so fake. It really did. And if I can't get that across in my edits and in the text box in these videos about this, you know, about him and his speech, like, I don't know if I did my job right, but, like, for sure. I mean, the whole thing was just like, it was sickly bought and paid for. And you can even see it on his face when he's getting this, like, 6-minute standing ovation.
Congress, I now have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel.
Right? In the beginning, you know, there's a point at where he's like, okay, like, it's a little too thick here to even be believable. But his face gives off a lot of reads, and his energy gives off a lot of reads during that whole speech. There's no doubt about it, man. It's a real sticky mess as far as that's concerned.
We've got the Biden curse. So where do I stand? He has to be halfway with it. You can't orchestrate mass genocide and complete dementia. But you can fund it.
Members of Congress, I now have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel.
You're like, wow, you guys laid on thick here.
Senators, members of Congress, distinguished guests. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me the profound honor of addressing this great citadel of democracy for the fourth time.
Yeah, you're quite at home. Is that how at home you are in front of our government, that you can welcome other guests? What kind of shit is that?
We meet today at a crossroads of history.
There's no limit. There's no limit to what these governments, whether they're criminal, there's no purport that purport. There's no limit. There's no limit to what these governments, whether they're criminal, democratically elected, lowercase d, or not, they still continue to hide the truth. But I couldn't resist this one because we caught them red-handed